Good morning, and thank you all for coming, and thank you to Senate Insurance Committee Chairman Kirk Talbot and House Insurance Committee Chairman Mike Huval. I appreciate them joining me here today. And as you know, we're currently in the midst of an insurance crisis, largely as a result of hurricane activity in our state the past couple of years, with the exception of last year, but also as a result of the impact of the situation, the crisis, so-called man-made crisis in Florida over the past decade or so. So today we're going to talk about success we've had in our state in addressing our crisis and what we're planning to do in the upcoming session jointly as a team, if you will, of myself and the two chairmen, as we have been for the entire time that they've been leading their insurance committees in the legislative process. Most recently, we addressed the crisis during a special session that the governor and the legislative leadership, Chairman Zarang of the Appropriations Committee, Senator Bodie White of the Finance Committee, along with Speaker Scheck-Snyder and President Cortez and Governor John Bell Edwards, pulled together a almost virtually unanimous support for an incentive program that is now about ready to begin having its effect, in that we are next week planning to distribute the $42 million that has been approved by the Joint Legislative Budget Committee for distribution. The incentive program we instituted after Hurricanes Katrina and Rita devastated the insurance markets in the aftermath of the devastating hurricanes of Katrina and Rita. The insurance market successfully was brought back through the incentive program that sparked an incredible recovery. Homeowners insurance in Louisiana was affordable and available for nearly 15 years, until an unprecedented combination of back-to-back catastrophic hurricane seasons and a legal environment that led to a greater crisis in Florida than in the Florida insurance market, as well as global reinsurance shortage that all hit us at the same time, which paralyzed the industry and led to the failure of non-insurance companies doing business in our state. The first step in rebuilding our recovery is well underway. You've seen the news. Our state leaders pulled together in February to fund the Insure Louisiana Incentive Program, which has already received 8 approved applications from insurers for $42 million in grants. To earn that money, these insurers must write a total of nearly $170 million in new premium, at least half of which will be written in South Louisiana. I anticipate we will see 40,000 policies come out of Citizens by the end of the program's first year, and 50,000 additional new policies written during that time. Chairman Talbot will elaborate on our plans for this program in a little bit. Now let me talk about why we've invited you here today. We're here to share with the public our package of proposed solutions for the long-term issues Louisiana is facing in the property insurance market. This package, which is centered around legal reform and the Fortify Homes Roof Grant Program, is the most ambitious reform we've attempted to achieve in my 17 years as Insurance Commissioner. Let's get started. We'll be happy to take questions at the end of the conference. Florida has long been one of the least profitable markets for property insurers in the country. Most of the insurance companies that failed over the past 2 years were either based in Florida or wrote the bulk of their policies in Florida. The state's poor legal environment for insurers drove insurance companies to safe harbor in Louisiana and other coastal states, and we benefited from those companies' participation in our market until the recent string of events I mentioned earlier. In a recent special session, Florida's legislature overhauled its legal environment to make its market more attractive to insurers and less attractive to the bad actors that took advantage of Florida's homeowners to file frivolous lawsuits. Because of these recent changes in Florida, I expect those bad actors to target Louisiana homeowners next. In fact, we're already seeing it. I had to issue a cease and desist order against a law firm, the first time I or any insurance commissioner in Louisiana has ever done that. By the way, that firm, based out of Texas, was working with a roofing contractor to fraudulently represent what appears to be several hundred of homeowners in claims against insurance companies. These actions drove up rates and make insurance companies hesitant to do business in our state, not to mention the pain that the unrepresented, though homeowners who thought they were getting coverage from through this law firm were indeed not appropriately represented. And it's not just I that has taken exception to that activity. The courts, federal courts in southwest Louisiana and in the southeast corner of our state have taken that law firm and that cabal, if you will, to task significantly in recent days. Last year, we successfully passed a package of legislation that was clearly aimed at protecting consumers from insurance companies in the claims process. This year, we're addressing a different problem, and I think Louisianians get it. They see the rate increases and the lack of policy options in the market. We need insurance companies to come back to Louisiana, and this is the best way to get it done. While we are not copying what Florida did legislatively, we are taking the lead in an effort to introduce several legal and claims process reforms that should strengthen our market for the long term. The bill, which will be introduced by Chairman Huval, would establish timeframes for insurers to follow in acknowledging receipt of a claim, begin adjusting a claim, and requesting the specific information they need from the policyholder to determine satisfactory proof of loss. Insurers would be allowed to require a sworn proof of loss statement from the policyholder to establish such proof of loss. The bill also adds a 2-year statute of limitations for policyholders to seek penalties and attorney's fees for untimely payment of claims. Let me be clear to both policyholders and insurers. My office will continue to work with policyholders who have trouble getting insurers to pay what they owe, and we will come down heavily on any insurer that is not meeting the terms of their policies. I issued hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines against insurers for failing to live up to their end of the deal during the claims process following Hurricane Laura, and the LDI is continuing to investigate abusive claims processes and practices in the aftermath of Hurricane Ida. In addition to Chairman Huval's bill, we're also proposing several other pieces of legislation that should improve our legal environment. Louisiana Citizens is held to the same bad faith timelines and penalties as any other insurer, but Citizens is not like any other insurer. Bad faith penalties exist to provide a negative incentive for private, profit-driven insurers. As the state-backed insurer of last resort, Citizens is not motivated by income or by the threat of paying bad faith penalties. If Citizens is ordered to pay bad faith penalties in excess of what it can afford, it would just assess all policyholders in the state. For these reasons, we are proposing legislation that will put Citizens in line with the Louisiana Insurance Guarantee Association and immunize it from bad faith penalties. We're also proposing legislation that would prohibit property insurance policyholders from assigning their benefits to third parties like roofing contractors without their company's approval. Assignment of benefits has been used by bad actors to commit insurance fraud. An example of this is the law firm I mentioned earlier, which developed a scheme that tricked policyholders into signing over the right to negotiate with an insurer on their behalf without the policyholder's knowledge. Other legislation we are proposing this session includes a bill that addresses an issue in which some insurance companies have attempted to prohibit policyholders from hiring a public adjuster for a second opinion as to the extent of the damage and the estimated costs necessary to cover their repairs. This bill will disallow insurers from including such clauses prohibiting the use of public adjusters in their policies. The final bill in our package I'd like to mention today addresses the appraisal process. The appraisal process is an important tool policyholders can use to work with insurance companies to determine the amount of a loss when a dispute regarding the amount of the loss arises. not coverage, but the amount in dispute is subject to appraisal. Our current process needs a clearer and fairer framework. Our bill outlines the qualifications and duties for appraisers and umpires, something needed as well, and prohibits one-sided communication between the umpire and any one party without giving the other party an opportunity to participate, and other reforms as well. With that said, I'll turn it over to Chairman Talbot to talk about some of his proposals for the upcoming session. Mr. Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Good morning. Like the Commissioner mentioned, the incentive program has been very successful, and I do want to thank Governor Edwards and Speaker Sexsnyder and President Cortez for their cooperation in that special session. Everything went smoothly, the timing was right, and everything went as planned, and I think that's going to help in a big way. The program has been more successful than we've anticipated. It's my understanding that after Katrina, they the incentive program that Governor Blanco championed kind of struggled to give away or to incentivize with $29 million. It seems like we blew through the first $42 million right out of the gate, with 8 insurers requesting actually $20 million more, I think $62 million than was allocated. So we will be asking the legislature for that extra $20 million in the regular session. I think Chairman Hooval has that bill to do that. That should translate into, if all that money gets used, that's going to translate into about $250 million of premium written in Louisiana. I think 50% of that will be below I-10 and I-12. So the idea is to get these policies out of citizens as quickly as possible. And as we saw after Katrina, it will attract other companies to come in and start writing as well. And we anticipate that happening. So that's kind of the thing we can do right now, just to stop the bleeding, get companies in here writing policies, and get some competition in our market, which we do not have right now. We also, the question we get asked all the time is, we want to make sure that these companies don't fail. So we passed some laws last year, and we have some laws this year legislation that we're proposing that will do that. Obviously, we can't guarantee that a company will never fail, but we're going to do everything we can to make sure they don't. The biggest bill or I guess the biggest policy change that the Commissioner has done is enhance solvency monitoring of these insurers, including the incentive companies. I know the Commissioner has hired a third party to monitor those solvency levels, I believe on a monthly basis, and will be reporting to the legislature on a quarterly basis to watch their reinsurance levels, monitor their solvency levels like never before, and make sure that these companies are staying healthy. Senator Bowie last year passed a bill that increases the minimum amount of capital and surplus that companies have to have on hand to do business in Louisiana. I thought that was a very important bill. Another bill that's proposed that Senator Cameron Henry from Metairie has filed, and that is to prohibit former officers and directors of insurance companies that became insolvent from serving as an officer or director of another insurer doing business in Louisiana if the former officer or director served in that role within 2 years. This is a good common sense reform that will prohibit individuals with a poor record of business practices from doing further damage to the insurance industry. So I think that sends a good message that we know, look, the incentive program was very successful last time. We know we had, lessons learned. We see those lessons, and we're applying those to the incentive program moving further. And with that said, I will turn it over to Chairman Hooval. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here today, and thank you, Commissioner, for the invitation to be with you today. There's one thing that we cannot pass a law against in our state, is to keep hurricanes from coming to our state. They're coming. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. One of the best ways that we can prepare for hurricanes is to use stronger materials and construction methods when building or modifying our homes. Last year, I introduced a bill to establish the new fortified homes program within the Department of Insurance. Under this program, Louisiana residents can apply for grants to retrofit their roofs using methods that meet or exceed the fortified home standards of the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. While the homeowners will need to meet some eligibility requirements and pay for permits, inspections, and similar fees, the grants will cover the additional cost to retrofit homes to the fortified roof standard in most cases. I believe this program will help a lot of folks resist storm damage in the near future while potentially reducing residential property insurance costs for the entire state in the longer term. I hope it will also encourage more people to consider building to the fortified standard moving forward. The program was created last year, but we didn't fund it. That's the priority this session. We plan on asking for $20 million in the budget to request for the program. The LDI has been working on the infrastructure needed to administer the grants, so we should see this program get underway rather quickly once we obtain funding, but we aren't stopping there. We are looking at other ways to encourage residents to obtain fortified roofs as well. In 2021, House Bill 451 passed into law, becoming Act 30. This bill authorized insurance companies to provide actuarially justified discounts or credits to policyholders who build or retrofit their residential or commercial structures to the fortified standard. This bill only authorized discounts and credits, so we are bringing a bill this session to mandate actuarially justified discounts and credits. This will ensure policyholders who are putting in the time, money, and effort to build or retrofit their structures to fortified standards are reaping all the benefits of that decision. We are further encouraging homeowners to build fortified through a bill authorized by Representative Gabe Furman that will require insurance companies to offer an endorsement to upgrade their policyholder roofs to the fortified roof standard of the IBHS if their home incurs a covered loss requiring the roof to be replaced. Insurance companies are permitted to charge an additional amount to the homeowner's premium if the policyholder chooses to add the endorsement to the policy. Thank you again, Commissioner Donelon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just a few closing comments. I did want to address one other issue I've heard discussed recently, and that is an effort being brought by some in the insurance industry to amend or repeal, create a loophole that would render ineffective our best protection of our market in the state of Louisiana. And that is our unique 3-year rule, passed in 1992, which states generally and is applicable and in place in only one state, and that is Louisiana. And that is, if you've been with your homeowner's insurer for 3 or more years, you and they are, as I call it, married for as long as that company does homeowners business in our state. Truly, the companies have always hated it. I think what they hate the most about it is the possibility of it spreading nationwide. It's been talked about in other areas. In fact, I think West Virginia had passed it at one time and then repealed it at a later date. But what it has done for us is today 60% of our homeowners insurance policies are written by 8 of the 9 largest national homeowners insurers in the U.S. 60% in our market are written by those 8 national companies. One company, Nationwide, won't do business with us as a result of our problems back in the 90s that are long behind us, but still a deterrent to that company's willingness to write business in Louisiana. But the other 8 are writing actively throughout our state to the tune of 60%. While in Florida, those same 8 national companies are only writing 25% of the homeowners business over there, where they have the option to write and come and go as they please. And I recognize that that is an infringement upon the private sector, but it is the most important statute on the books in Louisiana to protect the homeowners of our state from being subject to the whimsical writing and non-writing of coverage where we are so dependent below I-10, I-12. And it's not just benefiting those living in our industry below I-10, I-12. It benefits the entire state, because if you're not in the coastal area, there's no reason for those companies to feel compelled to write business or not write business in accordance with their absolute discretion. So I will be active in whatever efforts are made to water down or repeal the 3-year rule that I feel is so important, and wanted to add that before opening it to questions here today for any of us. Happy to field any questions we might have yet. Well, this was the press conference to announce our package of legislation, and I say our because Chairman Talbot, the Senate Insurance Committee Chair, and Chairman Huvald, the House Insurance Committee Chair, joined me to go through the major pieces of legislation that each of them is offering on our behalf, as well as their own agenda for the upcoming regular session.
Would you describe this legislative package as consumer-friendly?
Absolutely. We have some things in there that are specifically directed at protecting and enhancing options for insurers to do business, but at the same time, consumers to get affordable and available coverage in this hard market that we've been experiencing for the past year and a half now. So these measures, some of which address legal reform, but others, the process, for example, the appraisal process where referees and appraisers are unregulated and unlicensed or even trained or certified to be qualified to do the role of an appraiser or an umpire. That's part of the process designed to expedite claims processing when there's a disagreement over just price, not coverage. That is left for the courts. But when just price is at issue, those issues are subject to being subjected to the appraisal process that's contained in Louisiana Insurance Code, as well as in almost every policy of property insurance.
What is your advice for consumers as we're now in April?
They should be reaching out to their agent and getting options and prices for coverage that will probably be cheaper as a result of the incentive program that we passed funding for in the special session just last month. That in place now, with the checks being issued here next week, should result in more options being available, and therefore, through competition, cheaper coverage available for, in particular, those who have to get their coverage through Citizens, the state's market of last resort, by law, priced above the private sector.
How can people get more information?
Contact us or their agent. I would go to your agent first. They have your information and your interest at heart, know your situation better than we do, but we're here as well to counsel folks on their insurance needs and options. 800-259-5300, 800-259-5300.